We're on location for another shoot for the House of Muscle, and I just so happen to bring my old 68 Charger out. Now, I get a lot of questions about this car, so I wanted to go over a bunch of stuff that you may or may not know that's been done to it. Okay, let's start with the body first, okay? So when you look at the car, it looks, pretty much stock. However, if you look a little closer, you're gonna notice some things are missing. For one, the drip rails are completely shaved on the roof. The marker lights are gone on this thing. About 90% of the chrome has been removed from the car. That's the chrome around the tail, that's the chrome on the door sills, that's the chrome around the fenders. It's all gone. The whole goal was to basically streamline the looks and feel of the car so that it just looks completely smooth. The other part is the paint. There's probably, the car was painted over 20 years ago. In that time, I've probably had another 40% of it repainted because over time, you're gonna get stress cracks, you're gonna get peels, stuff like that. So we had it repainted a couple times. On the surface, this is about as clean as a 68 Charger as you're ever going to see. The wheels, 17 by 8s in the front, 18 by 10s in the back, 255/40 in the front, 285/45 in the rear. The chin spoiler, I get an enormous amount of questions about that. Believe it or not, that is off a 1967 Camaro, and I'm pretty sure this was the first Charger that has ever had one. We did this back in 2002, I think, or 2001. Most Chargers that you see now will have this. This is the originator right here. Don't ever let anybody tell you different. Okay, so the brakes were updated. Now, when we updated the brakes, you have to remember 20 years ago, there weren't these kind of pre-made kits like there are today for every muscle car on the planet. The kit is made by Bear. When we put it on, it was cutting edge. However, now the car's old, I'm old, and now they literally market the same kit as the classic kit. Not okay. But, they're not that bad. They're 13-inch brakes up front, 11 in the rear. The front caliper is essentially a PBR caliper. So think of it about is the same type of caliper you'd get off a kind of an 04 Cobra Mustang, front and rear. It's essentially the same setup as that. It works great, it's not that expensive, and you don't have to break the bank for it. All right, come over here and I'll show you the interior because that's totally different. So I also had the interior completely redone. It's basically modeled after an F430. I kind of wanted a little bit of kind of Euro flair to the car, which is what we did. We did kind of red piping on the seats to match the tail stripe, but it took time. I didn't do this when I first got the car. I mean, I've had it 20 years. This is not the build show you see on TV. It takes years to do this stuff. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes meeting the right people that you trust to actually do it. The other part of it is, don't feel like you have to do it immediately because you don't. Do it when you can. Keep the car mechanically sound so you can always get out and go drive the car. But otherwise, do a little bit at the time and then you'll enjoy it. So if you take a look, and aside from the kind of the pattern on the seats and stuff, you're gonna see other things that are not normal to a 68 Charger, right? The seatbelts, for instance, just standard over-the-shoulder seatbelts, but the standard ones would have the seatbelt up here and it came in a two-piece, which is a real pain in the ass. You want to get rid of those, put modern belts in. The dash has been completely redone. So the dash is a modern dash, but the gauge faces are now silver as opposed to black. The speedo also goes up to about 200 miles an hour, which is kind of ridiculous since the car is only going to do about 150 miles an hour. But it looks kind of cool, so we put it in there. Other things that you're going to see, the center console is completely custom to kind of house the transmission. Now the transmission in this car that's a whole nother ballgame. It is a 727, but it's a 727 with a reverse valve body with a Cope Racing lockout converter. That's mated to a gear vendor. What does that mean? It means when you shift, first, second, third, the gear vendor is a gear splitter. So think of it like every gear has an overdrive, right? So first, click the button, first overdrive. Slap it in the second, click the button again, second overdrive. Slap it in the third, click the button, third overdrive. So you can either say it's a 3-speed with an overdrive, or you could say it's an actual 6-speed. All depends on how you want to do it. The nice part is with a lockup converter, as soon as you put it in the gear and hit the button on the shifter, now you have direct drive. So you're not riding on the converter, you're not getting any slip, and it just kind of makes the car more efficient, and now you have all the power as soon as you hit the button, which is a nice feature to have. Out back, there's an 8 3/4 rear, 355 True Track in it. The way that the car is geared with a 27-inch tall tire, it's essentially made to run at 80 miles an hour at about 2,900 RPM, 2,800 RPM, but you still have all the power in the power band, which is kind of a nice thing to have.
Be it a domestic, JDM, or European vehicle, caring for your car is of the utmost importance. That's why Peak Auto offers a variety of products that are right for your vehicle. From coolant and lighting to diesel additives and wiper blades, Peak has you covered. So head on over to peakauto.com now to see which product is right for your car.
Suspension, not crazy. Everybody looks at this car and is like, well, what have you done to it? Because I've raced the car. I raced it in one lap of America. I've driven it across the country 6 times. But the suspension, really bigger torsion bars, completely stiffen the shit out of this thing. So subframe connectors, inner fender well braces, 2x2 box steel rad support. The thing with any Chrysler B-body is that if you do not stiffen them, the car will be like driving chewing gum. And you'll know this if you have a B-body. If you've ever put one up on the lift, it'll go like this, but the car actually goes like that because it's a unibody, it doesn't have a frame. So when you open the door, you won't be able to close it again because the car is literally bending like that. If you want a B-body to handle it, you have to stiffen the shit out of them. Do that, it'll be a completely different car. Shocks are off-the-shelf Bilsteins. They work fantastic, really good ride compliance. Otherwise, that's kind of it. There's not a lot of stuff that goes on. And the other thing that you have to understand is you don't have to go out and spend an enormous amount of money to get your stuff to handle. Ask yourself the question, what are you gonna do with the car? And then build the car around your lifestyle. Don't let other people dictate how your car is going to feel. That's the kiss of death. So now let's go under the hood and I'll show you what's under there. Okay, not rocket science. It's a big, dirty, big block that's been, the same motor's been in this car for, I don't know, over 20 years. 440, 30 over, intake, 800 double pumper on top. Not that powerful. Dynoed it, 274 horsepower at the wheels, 440 pound-feet of torque. Keep in mind you had a power loss between the 727 and the gear vendor, so as opposed to like 15%, you're losing like 25%, but the car will still cruise all day at 85 miles an hour, and I've had it up over 150, so more than enough. I've put probably 80,000 miles on it. I have beat the crap out of this thing. This car lives for donuts and burnouts and flogging it. You know, when I first got it, everybody said, well, you can't cruise a big block at 3,000 RPM, which is complete and total horse shit. This car has lived its life between 3,500 and 5,500 RPM across the United States, back and forth, road courses around the country. But if you look under, you're gonna see some funky stuff. We have a Hydro Boost system, which is a hydraulic brake assist. It gets rid of, if your car doesn't make a lot of vacuum, to actuate a standard brake booster, it gets rid of that and basically it uses the hydraulic pressure from the power steering pump to actuate the brakes. It works flawlessly. The other thing that I get a lot of questions about is there's this big, huge cylinder under there. That's called an AccuSump or a pre-oiler. Now what that does is that holds 3 quarts of oil. It does 2 things. One, as soon as you turn the key on your car in any automobile, it's a dry start. As soon as I turn the key on this car, you're gonna see the oil pressure will instantaneously, before the car starts up, it'll go up. You're shooting 3 quarts on top of the engine so that essentially the engine is starting kind of pre-lubed. The other thing is, if you're on a road course, if you really want the car to handle, and you lose oil pressure in a corner because the oil is sloshing back and forth in the pan, this will kind of anticipate that, it'll feel it, blow that extra oil onto the top of the motor so you never lose oil pressure. It saved me, I don't know how many times over the years. The other thing, yes, the car does have air conditioning. That's fucking glorious, okay? I will tell you right now, I drove this car for so long with no AC and no power windows. And I got the car when I was in my 20s, I'm in my 50s now. The 28-year-old Mike MUSTO was like, this is fine, I'll suffer for the craft because I'm that guy. And now I'm this guy. I don't want to suffer for shit. Power windows, air conditioning, rear defrost. Would drive this across the country tomorrow and I wouldn't blink. I have a gentleman by the name of Sean Machado who I really have to thank because he redid this entire car. And now it's as reliable as any new car that you could buy. I would have no problem taking it and going anywhere. But again, it's time. It took 20 years to get it to that point. Don't be afraid of holding onto a project until you feel that it's finished. And don't get discouraged. Drive it in the condition it's in and work your way up to it. Otherwise, that's it. It's a pretty straightforward 68 Charger. There's not a lot of bells and whistles about it, but there are a lot of rumors about it. The cool part is I'm never getting rid of it. There you go, Mike MUSTO's 68 Dodge Charger.